Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso at thewatchbox.com. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me directly, tmosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing. It's in the description below. Guys, in 2014, Arnold Son of La Chaux-de-Fonds launched this. This is the Royal TEC1 Tourbillon Escapement Chronograph, and it is exactly that. The TEC1 is a 125-piece limited edition in ultra-white precious metal palladium, a rare material and a rare watch objectively. It showcases what Arnold Son, producers of only about 600 watches a year, are doing with high complication. Now let's take a look at the size, because it's a big watch, but it's a big watch that wears small. 45 millimeters in diameter, it's 16 millimeters thick. From lug to lug across the wrist, 52.1 millimeters with a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Now Arnold Son is the brand owned by the manufacturer La Joux, which in turn is owned by the Citizen Group of Japan, which is to say here you have independent horology, innovation, cool, and rarity, but with a real watch group backing it with money for sales, service, and ultimately after-sales support and parts. So it's the best of all possible worlds. You get an independent watch brand, but with big group money behind it and the reliability that comes with that kind of relationship. On my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, you can see it wears well. I wouldn't recommend the watch for a wrist smaller than mine, but it's a good fit for me. It's not going to fit underneath tight shirts, but a jacket cuff should be okay. You're getting a lot of watch here. I can feel that it's hefty. The palladium gives it that quality, but you can also see that the lugs are relatively short and sharply downturned, so it doesn't feel like it's going to roll over the edge of my wrist. When you look from over the top, it's not projecting over the edge of my wrist, so it's really a good match in that regard. Let's take a look at hardware and software. Software first, a very thick, somewhat stuffed and bolstered, large rectangular scale alligator leather strap, black, semi-gloss, monotone stitch, folded edge. On the underside, you can see this is a brand new Arnold Son factory strap, and the leather on the bottom is calfskin. We have a matching precious metal palladium double deploying clasp, and it's quite a good looking piece, fully polished internally. You can see that the shape of the buckle actually echoes the shape of the lugs, a design parallelism that I love. Now, if you look at the case, you can see that this cannot be achieved by stamping. No, this is old-fashioned manual construction. As you can see, there's double finish. You can see the polished lip on the edge of the lug, and then there's satin finish on the raised portion. That's only possible if you're crafting the lugs as separate pieces and then welding them to the case. You can see that sharp break between lug and case. If you get super close with ultra-high magnification, you can see little bits of evidence that the lugs were welded on. This is the most expensive and traditional, and I should mention, labor-intensive way to make a case, but this is a true high horology, high complication, and no expense has been spared. The case has a lovely polished flank and then a double vaulted domed bezel that, as you can see, has two steps, a domed outer portion, then a larger domed inner portion, and the character line runs circumferentially. We have an Arnold Son crown that's both media blasted, raised, relieved, and polished on its center with a nice sharp knurling, so it's a pleasure to wind, and dramatically anachronistic pump-style pushers. Rolling over to the dial, you can see that it's a lovely gear-shaped pattern with a black lacquer on top. So there's a lot of nuance here. Starting with that dial base, you can see there's a chaptering outboard or a rehot that allows you to read fractions of seconds as well as minutes. Take note, all of the individual indices are steel, diamond polished, and rhodium plated, so they are ultra bright and they're faceted down their center for greater contrast. You can see that the hands, which are elaborated broadsword, are actually half frosted, or I should say half brushed, for better contrast against the black dial base. And then there is a concentric patterned sunken sub minutes, and this is a 60-minute display, a feature every chronograph should include. Why just give me 0 to 30 minutes? I need 60, because there are 60 minutes in an hour. Arnold Son gives you that. You can see that hand too, in the same style, has been half brushed for contrast, and then there's a polished chapter ring around the register. The tourbillon is gorgeous. There's a sunray motif on the base plate underneath it. You can see the bridge has been fully satinated on its top and then mirror beveled on its edge. You'll also note that there's a lovely white gold chaton fixing the pivot jewel for the tourbillon at center. And then the tourbillon carriage, as you can see from here, is entirely black polished with black polished screws. This is a high horology watch, both in specification, being automatic winding, tourbillon, and chronograph, but also in finish. Outside a handmade case, inside a handmade movement. Arnold Son 8305 automatic winding with ceramic rotor bearings for longevity as well as efficiency. It's a 55-hour power reserve with bidirectional winding action for smoothness, and it is a lateral clutch with a column wheel actuation, so you can see that blue column wheel. You can also see that both polished screws and blued screws are used on this movement, and the blued screws are fired blue, not dyed. The same is true of the column wheel. Note a Côte de Soleil radiating out from the center of the bridge that's used for chronograph and winding, and so you have a sunray motif among the Côte de Genève. They radiate out from the center. There's engine turning or perlage on the base plate. You can see abundant satination, first on some of the mechanisms affixed to the base plate, but also on the rotor itself. Now, what you'll notice if you look carefully is that you have satin finish on the top of the rotor, mirrored beveling on its edge, also true mirrored hand-finished anglage, enormously broad on the bridges. But you can also see that the winding rotor has been a satinated outboard. It's a 22 karat, not 21, not 18 karat, no expense spared, 22 karat, fully hand engraved, as this motif that's been engraved is done with a burin, not with an engine or a lathe. The same has been done on the center of the rotor where the Arnold Son name has been freehand engraved. So this is an extravagantly handcrafted component. One last look at the anglage. You can see this is a 5-position adjustment, just like a chronometer. 5-position is the high horology standard for movement adjustment, and then it's a 30-jewel movement. But look at the bevel on the edge of that bridge. It is a mile wide. The same treatment on the edges of the satinated components of the keyless works. This is a truly special watch, handmade inside and out, resplendent in palladium, a rarely used metal, and again, it's one of only 125 made, exceptionally scarce, from a brand that is truthfully only about 2/3 the size of FP Journe in annual production, with about 600 watches made. Don't fight over the $80,000 Patek Philippe Nautiluses on the market, and don't necessarily chase the Journe timepieces because you think you're supposed to. Sometimes you buy a watch on pure substance, and this watch has it all. Reach out to Tim Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details of the Royale TEC1 Tourbillon Chronograph. By the way, 30 meters water resistant, but please, please, please don't take it swimming.